Good morning. Good morning, and welcome to Coffee Breaks with Steve on Saturday, August 7th, 2021. If you're tuning in live right now, it is 9:30 in the morning Pacific time, and we're on live on the air. Good morning, Corey Ann. And if you are tuning into this later on, watching this in recorded mode, I don't know what time and day it is. That's whenever you're tuning in. But please, one way or the other, make sure that you are saying hello, saying hi, and joining in the conversation today. We want to make sure that you are a part of the conversation. Coffee Breaks with Steve is all of our coffee break. Hi, Jay. Hello, Kathy Garlic. Good to see you all here. And I know others will be joining us in the next few minutes, but I just want to say welcome. Hope you're having a great weekend so far, a great Saturday, a great month of August so far. We're now well over halfway through the year, right? We're getting to the 2/3 of the year mark in 2021. It still amazes me sometimes how quickly the months go by. Do you get that? I mean, when you're young, you stop and think about it. When you're a child, let's say you're 4 years old. And when you're 4 years old, first of all, you don't pay attention to the time quite as much. You know that that basically it's time for different things when mom says it's time for different things, whether it's a meal or bedtime or bath time or sit down and watch. You may even go by certain shows you watch on TV. But it's interesting that as you get older, time seems to go faster. Why is that? Is that an Einstein thing? And you think about it logically. When you're 4 years old, 1 year is a quarter of your entire life up to that point. When you get to be my age, 1 year is just a drop in the bucket. So we start to get older, but it is anyway August, and the year is moving right along. And there's a lot going on these days. So have you been watching the Olympics? Been paying attention to the Olympics these last couple of weeks? If so, what have you been enjoying the most? Do you have a favorite Olympic competition or sport that you like to watch? Have you been cheering on a certain team, a certain competitor, Team USA, or maybe it's another country that you like to cheer for? So, and I see Shalana's on here. Hi, Shalane. Yes, she's been watching Olympic highlights. Yeah, it's funny because it's so weird. It used to be, again, thinking, talking about back in the old days, used to be that there would be one network that would broadcast the Olympics, as there is this year, and they just had one channel. Like if NBC was broadcasting the Olympics, NBC would have certain times during the day or during prime time that they would show Olympic coverage. And now NBC itself, either directly or indirectly, has like 6 or 7 channels, maybe more, on cable. And they're showing some things live. They're showing different competitions on different networks or channels at the same time. And then they're showing stuff in the evening that's recorded from earlier in the day, because of course Tokyo is across the Pacific. It's across the international date lines in different time zone. So yeah, it's just been kind of interesting though to try to keep track of the Olympics this year. But according to my calendar, tomorrow is the closing ceremonies. The Olympics are going to be coming to an end already, and it seems like it went by very quickly. Again, time goes by fast when you get old. So August 8th is the Olympics closing ceremonies. I'm going to take a minute here and say hi, Rick Venturi. I see Jerry Zetterval's on here. Good morning. Good morning. And once again, if you are tuning in, say hi in the chat if you're tuning in live. And if you are tuning in later on and watching this in recorded mode, in what I like to call syndicated reruns, feel free as well to make comments and let us know that you were here and that you enjoy the show. All right, what else is going on this week? August 8th, tomorrow is also International Cat Day, or some places call it World Cat Day. I know it's important to some of you who are cat people. I don't see my friend Kim Baker on here, normally greets us with a good meowing and happy Catter Day, but I know others of you out there are definitely cat people. Tomorrow is World or International Cat Day. So if you have an international cat, tomorrow's the time to celebrate. Let's see, the 10th, August 10th is also a big day for a couple of reasons, and I'll get to birthdays in a minute, but I wanted to mention that August 10th is National S'mores Day. So that's a great day to celebrate by making one of America and maybe the world's favorite snacks, s'mores. It's funny, a few years ago, we had the house we were living in, we had an outdoor fire pit, and we would make s'mores sometimes outside when the grandkids were over. And one particular summer visit, my dad, who is now 94 years old, he was probably at that time in his late 80s. And he came to visit, and we went outside in the evening and we made s'mores. And he said it was the first time he had ever made and eaten s'mores. The actual, where you melt the marshmallow, put it with chocolate between two graham crackers. And it was fun and funny to watch him doing that. But the 10th is National S'mores Day. This next Friday, August 13th, this particular month and year, August 13th falls on a Friday. So guess what? It's Friday the 13th. We have a Friday the 13th coming up. If you're superstitious, maybe that means something to you. If not, maybe just have fun with it. And then also August 13th is Left-Handers Day. It's a day we celebrate the Southpaws, the people who are left-handed. It's interesting because so much of what over the centuries has been built, has been invented, was designed for right-handed people. And for many, many years, kids who were born left-handed were forced to use their right hands in school and in other settings. And actually, so it kind of, in some cases, led to some learning disabilities and could contribute to things like dyslexia and stuff because of messing up what they would naturally be doing. Let's see, what else? Birthdays this week. I had to look at my list again. August 10th, a couple of birthdays. Scott Glavin, my brother Scott. I didn't see Scott tune in here today. I think he's doing some traveling this week in honor of his birthday, but happy birthday, Scott, August 10th. Also, good friend Rupert Young. Rupert's birthday is also August 10th, so happy birthday, Rupert. And interestingly, 2 days later, August 12th, Rupert's wife, Analia Young, has a birthday. So happy birthday to Analia. So Rupert and Analia, big celebration week for both of you. And then August 13th, my brother-in-law, Paul Wharton, is celebrating a birthday. So happy birthday, Paul, on August 13th. All right, listen, that's the special days that I had down here. If you have a special day coming up this week, put it in the chat so we make sure we see it, we acknowledge it. And I like the fact that a number of you are putting your favorite, how do you make and eat s'mores? I love that. Thank you. Also, if you celebrate International Cats and you want to talk about that, I think Shalane made some comments. Feel free to do that as well. All right. Cat Day, dessert requiring opposite thumbs day, Friday the 13th, Southpaw Day, let them sink in. Yeah, thanks. Thank you, moderator Cat. Right. So we're going to be talking about some interesting things today, and I had to do a lot of reading about this, and I'm going to try to keep it from getting too complicated and too complex and convoluted. And I'm also going to try to be as accurate as I can with this. But this is just an interesting topic, and it comes up for a number of reasons. But I actually had run across some articles and some videos recently that brought this to light again for me, and I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about it. We're going to talk about some sort of mental memory, how the brain deals with certain memories and even memory mix-ups, false memories. We're going to be talking about deja vu, the Mandela effect, and other glitches in the matrix. Now, most of us have heard of deja vu and at least know what that is, where it comes from. It's actually from the French, and it means, I got to look at this again because I had it on here, already seen, deja vu, already seen. And we all know what a deja vu is. Most of us have experienced that or something akin to it at some points, right? Where you're in a situation and suddenly you almost get this disorienting feeling. There's almost this thing that happens. You go, wait a minute, I've been here before. Maybe it's something visual. It could be a setting that you're in. It could be tied to something that's being said or something audible that you're hearing, what you're seeing. The senses all of a sudden go a little bit crazy, because they're dealing with something that your brain is telling you you've already experienced. That's a deja vu. Um, and there are people who believe different things about what causes deja vu. There are a lot of beliefs and superstitions. Some people believe that it's tied to past life experiences, right? Reincarnation and past lives. Other people believe that there are actually glitches or even parallels in our universe that cause certain things to be repeated, and we may or may not have a full memory of it, but it sparks a memory. You think about movies like Groundhog Day, or Live, Die, Repeat, Tom Cruise movie, science fiction movie, and others that have dealt with this concept of days repeating themselves. If you've seen the movie The Matrix, remember that there's a scene where they're walking through a building and Keanu Reeves' character sees a cat, and then he glances over and sees exactly the same thing, and he goes, whoa, deja vu. And everybody else reacts. Says, what do you mean? What did you see? And he tells them, and they say, was it similar or was it the same cat? He says, I don't know. It says, well, when a deja vu usually means a glitch in the matrix. And again, sort of a controlled environment and an artificial environment. And there are people who believe that that's what we're living in, right? Now, there is a science behind deja vus, and reasons why scientists, neuroscientists, psychologists, psychiatrists say that we experience these moments. And again, I'm not an expert. I'm not going to try to go into all the scientific explanations. But basically, they say it's how the brain deals with similarity and familiarity. Now, similarity would be that you're experiencing something that is similar to something you've experienced before. It could be a sight, it could be a sound, it could be a smell, it could be anything that the senses take in. And it's a reminder of something that has happened before. We hear certain songs on the radio over and over again. You have these memories where you'll hear a song from your high school days, and all of a sudden you're like, oh man, I can remember exactly where I was. I remember the dance that I was at. I remember the person I was with. I remember riding in a car. So there's certain memories that are sparked, that are triggered by certain events. Hey, there's Scott Glavin. I just saw that he said hello. And if you weren't on earlier, Scott, happy birthday coming up this week. Mentioned that a few minutes ago. Okay, getting back to the deja vu. So the brain, the part of the brain that processes those memories, if there's something that is familiar, something similar that comes up, the brain recognizes, brings up that memory, and it connects that memory to what you're currently experiencing. What the brain cannot do is something may be similar, but the brain doesn't necessarily always recognize the difference between similarity and familiarity. And the deja vu, scientists say, is often caused in a situation where the brain is taking something that is a reminder of something in your past, but it's not an absolute clear memory. And your brain is in converting that and processing that as if you've lived that before, experienced the moment before. And the other thing that they say is that it can actually be exacerbated. You can deal with, it's more common. These studies have shown that people experience a deja vu more frequently, more commonly, if they're dealing with fatigue, anxiety, stress, that the things that impact your body from a stress standpoint or from an unhealthy standpoint can also be the sparks for the deja vu, because in those times, your brain is not as clearly processing the differences between what is familiar, what is similar, what is reality, and what is perceived. And so, there are things around the deja vu, but there are people who believe that they're caused by other things. We're going to get to those other beliefs and other potential causes in a few minutes. I'm going to talk about a couple of other things first. And another one is the Mandela effect. Now, that's not as familiar to a lot of people. Excuse me. Shalane, your turn. Not as many people have necessarily heard of the Mandela effect, or maybe you've heard of it, but you didn't ever hear what it was. And the Mandela effect is not, the concept behind it is not new. It's something Freud talked about. It's something that has been studied and brought up in a variety of ways over the centuries. And it's when people collectively, a group of people or a certain number of people, have the same memory about something that happened in the past which differs from reality. It's called the Mandela effect in modern times because currently it sort of got repopularized and rebrought to the surface when Nelson Mandela, the retired president of South Africa. And I think most of us know Nelson Mandela's background. He was an activist in the 50s and so post-World War II era in South Africa. He was an activist against apartheid, the white minority rule of South Africa that oppressed the black population, the black majority in South Africa. Nelson Mandela was one of the people who very strongly worked against that to the point of being truly militant and was imprisoned for many years in South Africa. Finally, in the 90s, I think it was the 90s, correct me if I'm wrong on this, I may not be getting every bit of the history right here, but he was released from prison finally. There was a big move because of world pressure against South Africa for their apartheid movement. And ultimately, the white minority surrendered control of South African government to the black majority and political parties that were being run by the black majority. And Nelson Mandela was elected president. Now, flash forward to just a few years ago, Nelson Mandela, now quite old, I think in his 90s, dies, and it makes international news. And there were a group of people who went, wait a minute, I remember reading that Nelson Mandela died years ago in prison. And somehow erasing all of the history, all of the news stories, all of the coverage about Nelson Mandela, getting out of prison. There was a lot of coverage about that when he got out of prison. He traveled internationally. He met with world leaders. He was elected president and served as president in South Africa for many years. And people are going, wait, Nelson Mandela just died. He died many years ago in prison. Now, what causes those kinds of collective false memories, right? Why are a bunch of people remembering a certain thing? I get to that. There are other situations, and you can go online, look on Google, not right now, wait till the show's over, but go on Google and look up the Mandela effect and look at certain things where they will show you these examples of where they show like a certain product, Fruit Loop cereal, and they will show two versions of the box, one with it spelled Fruitloops, and one where it's spelled Froot loops. And they'll say, well, which one is correct? And a lot of people, you get a split. People will remember as, no, I remember seeing that. I remember getting that. I remember a certain thing. And again, it's how is our brain interpreting certain things that we see? Now, another one that you will see come up is people talking about the fact, and I haven't researched all of the historic details, but that the torch in the Statue of Liberty, you could go up in the head for quite a while. The torch in the Statue of Liberty also used to be accessible. And prior to the First World War, there was an explosion in the New York harbor, and there was some damage done to the Statue of Liberty, not severe, but there was some damage. And from that point forward, going into the torch was no longer allowed. You could go up into the head, and that has been accessible and not accessible at different times. But there are people who are alive now who are talking about remembering that they went up into the torch when they visited the Statue of Liberty in the 1960s as a kid. There are pictures, there are shots of the harbor taken from the torch. So why is it that people have one memory that differs from what history tells us? Okay. And so it leads to a lot of conspiracy theories. Now, again, scientists have explanations for these things, how our brains interpret certain things and how collective memory can work. One simple explanation that you may have seen is, why is it that when like the police are interviewing witnesses to a certain crime, they want to separate their witnesses rather than interviewing them in a group? What happens when you interview people about something that they observed, they witnessed, as a group? The statement of one person begins to influence the memory of another person. You can actually mess up the memories and the actual remembrances because it starts to filter. It starts to actually influence what we think we remembered. So it can be that somebody says, wait a minute, I remember that Nelson Mandela died. Oh yeah, I kind of remember that too. Now with the internet and with social media, those types of rumors like that, those types of missed memories being spread and other people reading them, it becomes much more widespread. And people going, wait a minute. Now, here's some explanations that people have for things like Nelson Mandela, the confusion about that. During the same era, there were other activists who also gained fame. there is a name which some of you may or may not remember, who was also an activist for South African independence by the name of Stephen Biko. Stephen Biko was also a Black activist in South Africa who was also imprisoned. Stephen Biko did die in prison. And there was a tremendous amount of controversy about how he died. Was he tortured? Was he murdered in prison? There was a lot of, he wasn't as well known before he died as he was after he died, because of the controversy around his death. And some of the experts say, is it possible that people, when they think about Nelson Mandela, they're mixing the two people? Have you ever done that, where you've mixed up even celebrities or other people that you remember? You're remembering certain facts or certain things that one did that actually should be attributed to the other. So people say that whether it's Stephen Biko specifically or not, people may be remembering someone else besides Nelson Mandela that had enough similarities. Again, we're getting back to similarity and familiarity. Similarities that it's mixing up the facts that they remember. Okay, that's one explanation for the Mandela effect. When you think about the Statue of Liberty, once again, I mentioned that people could still go up in the head, in the crown, for a number of years. Were people mixing up, especially if they made that trip when they were a kid, or they mixing up which part of the upper level of the Statue of Liberty they were in? You say, yeah, but there are pictures taken from the torch. That's because there has been a webcam in the torch for a number of years. It is still accessible. Workmen go into the torch occasionally, but it's not open to the public. And there is a webcam up there that looks out over the bay. So a lot of the pictures that you see where people will post and say, look, I mean, there are even pictures from up there, were not taken there by tourists going up there. So we also get influenced, and oftentimes this also gets tied into things like confirmation bias. If we are convinced that something is true, we will begin to look for things that confirm what we believe is the truth. And that happens in a lot of ways. Now, a little bit briefly, this has gotten, I know it's already gotten a bit complex, but I want to talk about some of the conspiracy theories, because there are a couple of them that are very interesting. But conspiracy theories around this include things like the sort of the matrix effect. Are we living in an artificial intelligence world where it's not really, we're constructs in this world in some fashion, and we think we're alive, but we're really not? There are people who truly believe that. And I'm not going to make fun of these beliefs. I'm just telling you, these are beliefs that exist. Another one that is very interesting, and it takes a lot more study. Do you remember all the stuff leading up to the, was it the Mayan calendar in 2012 said the world was going to end in 2012? There are people who believe the world ended in 2012. And there's a whole conspiracy theory around that I will explain very briefly, because we're going to run out of time. But there are people who believe that the world essentially ended, got sucked into a black hole, and we are living in a parallel universe that black hole sucked us into. We were basically destroyed, but our consciousness is living on in a parallel setting, and we're not aware of it, other than the fact that it changed some historical realities. And that's why some people remember Mandela one way and some people remember a different way. Here's what people believe, some people believe caused that, and how the world ended in 2012. Have you ever heard of CERN, which is in Switzerland? It is a facility that studies physics, particles, and they have a number of particle accelerators there. And one of them is the Large Hadron Collider, the LHC. It's the world's largest and most powerful particle accelerator. First started operating in 2008. And one of the things that scientists at CERN, along with many other places, have been studying over the years is to try to confirm the existence of the Higgs boson particle. And I'm not going to go into a lot of explanation there because I'm not a physicist and I'll mess it up. But basically, the Higgs boson particle has to do with an entire theory around how movement takes place and expansion or contraction takes place in our universe. The existence and the spatial and dynamic dimensions of our universe. And again, everything is based on the atom and based on the particles of the atom. And the Higgs boson theory and the Higgs boson field has to do with the stability of our universe, just to put it very simply. And if some of you have better explanations, please correct me or expand on what I'm saying in a way that people can understand. the theory was always there, but no one had ever actually been able to replicate the Higgs boson particle until it was done by CERN at the Large Hadron Collider on July 4th of guess which year? 2012. 2012. Remember the Mayan calendar. Okay, so the LHC, CERN announces some point after that, after they've confirmed their information, that they have indeed, and by the way a particle accelerator works is it's this huge tunnel, and the Large Hadron Collider is 27-kilometer ring of superconducting magnets with a number of accelerating structures to boost the energy of particles along the way. And what they do is they fire particles in opposite directions around this huge accelerator until they reach almost the speed of light, and then they collide them, and they can replicate functions of atomic fission and fusion with different particles. In 2012, they actually, for the first time, replicated and were actually able to see a Higgs boson effect through the particles colliding. There are people who believe that when they did that, remember Higgs boson having to do with certain stabilities in our universe, that it actually, in essence, created a black hole within the accelerator that destroyed the Earth as we know it and sucked it in. And that as a result, we no longer exist in the Earth, in the universe in which our Earth existed prior to 2012, and that the Mayans were right. There's a lot of other stuff that goes on with the true interpretations of the Mayan calendar, the timing, and whether it actually represented the end of the world. It was primarily because the Mayan calendar didn't go past a certain date. And so there was this assumption that they had done some astronomical calculations that determined the world was going to end. All of that aside, the point being, the brain is a powerful thing, right? And we have all of these different things that we experience. I know I haven't all been able to watch all of the comments in here. I know in some of the Facebook posts earlier this week, Corey Ann Woodard, who's on here, mentioned even, what about premonitions? We're talking about past memories. What about things that you remember in the future? That's probably a topic for a different episode. We can talk about premonitions and clairvoyance and those types of things too, and what the brain is doing with those. Look, I'm not going to ridicule anybody's beliefs. You believe what you want to believe. I think that there are explanations for most of this. And to me, what's most fascinating, the two most fascinating things about this are the power of the brain for good and for evil, right? The brain can be this powerful tool because you think about how much we do remember. Go back. What are some of your earliest memories? What about memories that you don't have? And you go, I should remember that too. Somebody else reminds you of something that happened, and for a variety of reasons. I know, we had the Zettervalls on here some weeks ago and talking about Jerry's situation. She talked about certain memories that she no longer has because of a physical condition, a medical condition, something that occurred to her. And some of us have those. People who've experienced other situations, whether it's a stroke or whether they have seizure syndromes, there are different things that can happen that can affect the brain. And yet the brain is a very powerful tool. People who deal with memory diseases such as Alzheimer's, we begin to see the impact that those things have. Look, it's not about getting heavy with all of this, just recognizing the brain is very powerful, but so are the influences that can affect how we choose to think about things. Think about the complexity of the human mind that allows us to make choices about those beliefs and what we consider to be true, and how we justify certain things that we experience and how we apply those to our lives. So it is interesting to think about some of those things. I am curious. I will go back and read more of these comments because I've been focused in on trying to share some of the stuff. And again, I hope I did at least a partially decent job. I hope this was an interesting topic, and that you have enjoyed being part of this conversation. So just a quick update on what's going to be happening next week. Next week we're going to talk about motivation and perseverance. How do you what are the goals that in your life are worth working for? They're the goals you get serious about. We sometimes see those happen with New Year's resolutions, but sometimes we have longer term goals, life goals. They may be financial, they may be physical, they may be in terms of our education or our career. We set these goals, and sometimes along the way, it can be difficult to continue being motivated. And perseverance goes with that. How do we stick through? Why should we stick through? What are the benefits of continuing to pursue a goal and remaining motivated? How do you motivate yourself or get motivated when you're beginning to lose that momentum? How do we persevere through? And are there circumstances where it's okay to say, this is no longer working and it's time to move on? We're going to talk about that a little bit next week. And I want to hear some of your life goals, some of the things that you've worked on, and how you have applied certain things to persevere, to maintain that motivation to work toward those goals. That's going to be next week. And again, I've mentioned this the last few weeks. If there are topics you would like to see us discuss on Coffee Breaks with Steve, please reach out to me. Let me know. I would love to consider those, get back in touch with you and see if we can work to put those topics into play in some fashion here. In the meantime, I'm going to leave you, as I so often do, just remind you that, look, we can all make a difference. I just want to say one thing. And I don't usually make statements that are overtly political or make a stand on something. We're dealing with a lot of the resurgence right now of our COVID through the Delta variant and other conditions that are related to that. We're seeing a lot on the news right now about that. I just want to encourage you, please, whether it's been mandated in your area or not, wear a mask when you're going into public places. Protect yourself and the people around you. Take that extra step. No, it's not convenient, but let's get beyond what's inconvenient and do what is necessary. If you have not yet been vaccinated, get the vaccine. The science is real. The science is accurate. And I'm telling you, we need to be able to work together as a populace to get beyond this. I know some of you deal with situations with people around you who are resistant and reluctant, and I know it can be difficult. And I'm not telling you how to live someone else's life, but let's live our lives in the way that we can be most effective. And that's just one of so many different ways that we can make a difference in our world. So do make a difference in your world this week in any way you can. God bless you. I appreciate you. Have a great week.